It's an honor today to have Richard Levy on the podcast. Richard's the founder and CEO of Sophera Marketing. With a wealth of experience in driving commercial success across the globe, he has extensive experience in building and enhancing brands through every marketing channel. He's led high-performing teams in the UK, EMEA, and North America for illuminous companies like GE, Santander, First National, and MoneyGram. He's also worked with a number of UK-based companies, including Tesco, Halfords, Homebase, and British Gas. Richard's expertise spans digital marketing, brand management, CRM, analytics, research, strategy development, social media, agency management, and marketing communications. Richard, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Goodness me, that was some introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me onto the show.
I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
I would love to start with you sharing a little bit of your story with our listeners, Richard, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
Yeah, it's a good question. It was a long time ago, or it seems a long time ago, that I did what a lot of people do in the UK is you graduate from university, and I did business administration. And the strange thing is that if you do law or accountancy or finance, then the path is relatively clear for you. When you do a more generalist course like business, of course, you come out and there's not such a clear path. But I joined a very large bank in the UK, a Spanish bank, but based in the UK at the time, Santander, on their marketing graduate scheme. And you spend 6 months in a branch working on the front line, which is incredibly educational, actually, to go and see what's really happening. And then 6 months in a communications department, advertising, and then 6 months in a products area. And then I joined there, and then from then on stayed primarily in financial services, but had a far more curious mind to take me into other industries. So I was in places like GE, for example, which is, again, that's GE Capital at the time. And that was almost like going to university every day. The caliber of people at GE was phenomenal. It was just at the end of the Jack Welch era, and then Jeff Immelt came in. So there was quite a lot of transformation going on there. And then MoneyGram, where I ran Europe and their digital arm. And then a company called OFX, which was based in Australia. So I sort of got this international experience from the UK, America, and then Australia. You'll see that I don't speak more than English. So consequently, I sort of tried to stick to the countries that I didn't have to learn another language. Having said that, I think two of the biggest leadership challenges, as that was your original question, that I've had is one is managing teams that were in Australia when I'm based in the UK. There's a 11-hour time difference.
Yeah.
So your time together is either very early in my morning or very late. And also getting to know people and understanding it, and those water cooler moments and the everyday life moments that in leadership, if you're going to be authentic, getting to know people as people is really difficult. And the second bit was managing people in countries like Russia, where the culture is very, very different from the UK. And so it's a really interesting learning experience. And I actually think the culture in the US and the UK is fairly different as well. So when you go internationally, you see the idea that everyone is like you is nonsense. And you actually learn very quickly you're going to have to adapt to them rather than the other way around. I remember being in a meeting in Italy as an example where literally, there was 9 people and they're speaking Italian. because I'm the only one that doesn't speak English. And you feel it's quite an uncomfortable position because everyone's adjusting for you, and yet you're the one who's trying to build your credibility. It's an interesting one.
Mm. You know, so many things you touched on there are things that I deal with clients and I help them walk through all over the world. You know, culture matters. And I think so often we think about the competency of team members that we're looking to hire or that we're managing. We look at their competency, we look at their character, we look at the chemistry of the team, and all those things are important. But every team, every company has a culture. And that culture exists inside of the larger culture and where it's located, where the team is located. And you ignore that to your peril. Like, as you have led and managed remote teams from all over and worked with clients from all over, like, can you think of an example of a time when, man, I thought this and we ran headlong into a brick wall?
Yes, is the answer. And interestingly, if I look at the US market as an example, when I manage teams in the US, let me talk about the UK, US, and Australia, because there's 3 English-speaking areas.
Yeah.
So English culture tends to be everyone being desperately polite to each other, as we are in England, never quite saying what we mean, sort of going around the houses, etc. When I then ended up working in Dallas, I found it very direct. People just said what they felt, and that sort of level of small talk and what did you do on the weekend almost doesn't exist. It's very much like, let's get down to business and let's do it now. And a real, I was going to use the word subservience. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but a hierarchy where if the CEO said you go left, well, everyone goes left. And I think in the UK, if the CEO goes left, everyone goes, why are we going left? So we sort of question it more, where in the US, I certainly found it was much more led at the top and that you followed instruction and you didn't really question it. And then I felt in Australia, as I alluded to before, I think the biggest challenge in Australia is that this time difference is a real killer. Because when I was managing teams in the US, about 2 p.m. everyone will come online. So you've got from 2 till, say, 6 or 7. You can get 4 or 5 hours in every day.
Yeah.
In Australia, their 7 p.m. is my 8 a.m. So if I start at 7 a.m. my time, it's 6 p.m. their time. So they're looking to leave. Their day's done. They've been there long enough, and yet you're coming in and saying, okay, tell me about the days, and it's difficult. And then also managing conflict between them and someone else in an Australian office when you're not there, you're not seeing the personalities, you're getting a lot of different views. It's really, really difficult. And the only way around it, and I'm taking away the practicality, is to spend as much time as you can actually over there in the office in Sydney, getting to know people and understanding it. And ideally, you'd spend a month or so really integrating yourself so you can get an idea of the picture. Because you were right to say that not just every company has its own culture, but every office has its own culture.
That's right.
And you're on the outside of that because you're on the other side of the world. And so either you have people who you have a relationship with already, or you somehow can find commonality that you somehow can really blend, or I think it's a little bit struggle both ways. And probably that was where, when you said, did I hit a brick wall? I had to really get very introspective and ask a lot of people for advice on how would you manage this situation, because it wasn't easy. And it was an interesting learning.
That's good. You have been in the marketing world for a couple of decades now.
Yeah.
And with somebody who has been in a field that long, you have seen a lot of things come and go, a lot of shiny objects come and go, a lot of trends come and go. And I'm curious, as you think back, what are some things that pop out at you as some key takeaways from your tenure in marketing thus far?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. When I first started, the measurement, the effectiveness, there's this awful quote in marketing that goes back many decades, which is, a I waste 50% of my marketing budget. I just don't know which 50% it is.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and what that does is suggest that there's a sort of lack of accountability. And if you look at marketing, and a lot of businesses, the biggest expense tends to be the people.
Right.
Then there might be an IT budget, and then there's a marketing budget, or there may even be a people and then marketing. So the IT and the marketing are a bit interchangeable. The point being, it tends to be the second or third largest budget traditionally in companies. With that comes a responsibility. When I first started, we would measure the effectiveness. We'd put an advert in a publication. It would have a code next to it, and we'd say, when you ring up this number, quote this code, and then everyone would be writing down on their spreadsheet how many times the code was quoted. And then we could say, someone quoted it 15 times, so we'd know we had 15 responses to that advert on that particular day. So really unscientific. We've now gone to a very, very different extreme. And let's use digital marketing as an example, where I don't think we've mastered as an industry a common attribution model that satisfies everyone. So, for example, how did I hear about your podcast? It's very possible that a friend said to me, listen to this podcast, it's really good. I then go onto your website, do a Google search, I then click, and we then have a conversation on the podcast.
Yeah.
If you're looking at that statistically, you're going to say online conversion, right? He did a bit of a Google search, found where I was, clicked, and went through, tick. The reality was it was actually nothing to do with the online element, really. That just facilitated it. It was the fact someone had told me about it. So we haven't got this measurement correct. Econometrics is coming in the UK. My personal view is anyone who's spending any significant amount of money needs to have some kind of model that suggests what's happening, because we're moving, I think we might be moving out of it, but we've been in an era where everyone wants to measure everything.
Yeah.
And that's good because it brings people accountability, but also it allows certain things to go unchecked. So I'll give you one more example, if I may.
Please.
If I, as owner of Sophera Marketing, on my brand term, have to pay Google to have my advert showing on Sophera Marketing. So if someone then has to type in Sophera Marketing into Google, click on my advert because it's the first banner they see, and then they go on to hire me to help them with their marketing. Do I say to myself, it was the advert that won, so my acquisition cost is really low because obviously it's my own brand term and the relevancy and all that? Or do I say to myself, actually, whatever I spent on that, I wasted because they typed in Sophera Marketing anyway, and so quite clearly they were looking for me and they would have found me through organic search. But what's going to happen is, in my experience, is most marketeers will say, this is brilliant because brand search is traditionally quite a low cost of acquisition.
Yeah.
You could feed that back to the business and say, look how well we're doing. And someone should say, yeah, but what about the incrementality? What happens if you weren't doing it? And there's now companies in the UK who are testing doing non-brand search. So they don't cover their brand at all. And they're not seeing much difference in the traffic. So therefore, the argument would be that by measuring it, we're measuring the wrong thing. We're measuring how it happens. We're not measuring the incrementality. And I think that's a serious problem we have.
Yeah, that's fascinating. How do you build a strategy in the midst of that type of a context?
You first realize that there's something I heard the other day from a very clever strategist that said to me, audience before content, which I love, because what it's saying is know your audience and then make the content relevant to them. Don't build the content and then feed it to the audience.
Yeah, no,
So
I like that.
It was just a nice little ABC of audience before content. And I felt that when you're talking to the CFO or the CEO, clearly this is going to have to be a numerical conversation. They're not interested in brand awareness, brand equity, I don't know, right? Brand recall, however much jargon you and I no doubt could spend hours talking about.
Right.
They're not interested. What they're interested in is top line, bottom line, customer lifetime value, cost of acquisition, financials, which is correct in their position. So any strategy you build, and I really say this, I teach at Cambridge actually, it's one of the things I teach the students there, is you have to understand, right, the commercial value of what you're doing. Because if you can't translate what you're doing into pounds and pence or dollars and dimes, in your example, I think you're really, really going to struggle to gain credibility. So that strategy has to start with, what are we trying to achieve as a business financially, and how can I contribute towards that? Now, we as marketeers may not be responsible for setting the price, and I would hope we have a say in it. We may not be responsible for certain aspects of the customer journey, but in the bits we are responsible for, or what we can influence, the strategy has to ultimately feed to a commercial outcome, which sounds really obvious. But the amount of marketeers I speak to, and I say, how much revenue did you generate last year with this? And they look at you in a slightly panicked way and said, but we increased brand awareness.
Right.
That's a problem.
I agree. Well, that's not what the CEO is interested in, right?
No.
And like you say,
And
they're looking at the bottom line.
And that's why, as an industry, if you look at the amount of marketing people in the boardroom, it's diminishing, because we struggle as an industry to talk in the only language that people really want to hear, which is show me the commercial impact of what you've done. So it's a challenge. So strategically, I always say to people, start with what we're trying to achieve as a business and work our way back. And if you can go into the boardroom and talk about, I increased the customer lifetime value, I brought in 100 different customers, this will be their value, this is what it cost us, truly cost us incrementally. Instead of customers staying with us 2 years, they're staying with us 4 years. Those terms, and you can then equate to some financial outcome, you're going to have your C-suite position, because this is someone people want to listen to, and they feel this guy's really helping my business. So I always say, set the strategy. Because if you're talking to the CEO or CFO, what do they want to hear? And you shouldn't go that far wrong. But it's difficult, because as marketeers, we don't really want to admit we can't measure everything. We don't want to admit that some things we tried don't work. And also, I find that when you're setting strategy, things outside of your control also will come in and might provide you with headwinds. Things can be good, or might provide you with difficulties. You don't know what the competition are going to do. You don't know if there's going to be a new entrant. You don't know if someone's going to slash their price. You don't know if someone's going to open up a store next to your most successful one. There are these variables that, of course, will influence a lot.
A very good point. One of the biggest conversations that I hear these days in marketing world is that around the rise of AI. As you look at the landscape with the context of the decades you've spent in the field, how do you see AI? What do you see it as?
I think we're underestimating it, which is a bold claim, which probably will be in Marketing Week, which is the UK publication of marketing, if I say that we're underestimating it. And we're underestimating it because there are certain revolutions that come along every X amount of years. You've got the Industrial Revolution, the Technological Revolution. The internet provided a revolution. It fundamentally changes the way we behave.
Absolutely.
And AI will do so. Let me give you an example from outside the marketing world, and then we'll bring it back to our world. If you go for a knee operation in a year's time, you can either have a doctor doing it who spent the last 10 years doing it and knows his or her knowledge. Her knowledge is pretty good, so this is good, fills you with confidence. Or you could go to a machine that could look at every knee operation that you've got that's ever happened and say, this is what needs to happen, and this will be the recovery time, and this is how long it will take. Now, you still need that surgeon probably to guide it and to explain it to you and to work alongside it. But suddenly you're talking about a machine that within the space of seconds could diagnose your problem, could tell you what the solution is, and then can tell you how you're going to recover from it. So let's now make that about marketing. Marketing done properly, which is not that common, but done properly, has 3 stages, which is diagnose, then set the strategy, and then set the tactics. The problem is that I have found, and this is a mistake I've made, is that I've gone into interviews with companies who want my services and said, well, this is what we need to do, William. We need to spend the next 9 months diagnosing, then I'll come up with a strategy, then I'll tell you what the tactics are. And they say, that's really good, but we've got about 9 days, not 9 months, right? So you're now worrying me,
Right.
right, with this kind of approach.
Right.
AI will help with all of that, because it will do it can do the groundwork for us. Now, it will only ever be as good as the inputs that we put into it,
Yes.
and it will only be as good as the outputs we take from it and then amend and change around. So I look at it as a sort of 80-20 rule, where 80% of it AI will do for you, but the 10% at the beginning and the 10% at the end are the most crucial bits. Don't be lazy.
That's good.
Right? Because AI will hallucinate, not understand, get things wrong, quote sources that don't exist. And also, you've got to put it in your language. There's nothing worse than you look on LinkedIn and people write and you think, well, a computer wrote this, right? So you don't want that. But you think about, I was investigating the other day, synthetic research, which is becoming sort of quite big here in the UK. I don't know if you've come across this as of yet, but the idea that rather than me going to 2,000 people, paying a polling company, getting the right people, I can do it via AI and they'll build the personas and they'll look at everything that's ever been said about this kind of thing on the market. And then I'll feed in a question and it'll take all that information and come back with the latest answer. Now, there's issues with that. There's issues that how up to date is that? How reliable is it? But equally, there's issues when you do human research, when people have to fill out 30 questions on a questionnaire, by the time they come to number 20, I don't mean their concentration level is what it was at number 10.
Right.
People guess. People don't know. People just want the incentive that you're giving them to filling out the questionnaire. So AI will take all of that away as well. So there's limitations, but there's advantages. So I think when marketers come to me and say, I'm concerned AI is going to take my job, I'd say, well, it won't as long as you know how to use it. So you need to embrace it. And secondly, when people say, well, all creative will look the same, I read a study the other day from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute in Australia that 71% of B2B creative is never recalled by any customer the next day. So I would say your creative is pretty crap now, on the whole.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe me, go and watch TV, right? And then tell me what you think of the adverts, right? And
Good
so,
word.
therefore, I think we have a lot to gain by something helping us. And also, the other thing I love about it is if I'm dealing with SMEs or entrepreneurs or people on their own, it's made the whole thing much more democratic, because the idea before was that you had to be a big company to be able to afford a creative to do this work for you.
Right.
Now, GPT image creator, if you put in the right input into it and you have a bit of patience, within 10 minutes, you can have an advert that's probably as good as a creator would have made for you in 2 days and charged you a few $100s for. You've got to put the effort in before. Put the effort in before, you will reach, the dividends will be rich.
I like what you said there about the 80% and the 10 and the 10. I think that's something that not a lot of people are talking about. And I think that's really important. Way back in the day when we were in the early days of computers, there was a term that was in vogue then that I think is going to come back. And that's GIGO. Garbage in, garbage out. You put garbage data into the room size computer, you got garbage results out. And I think of AI exactly that way. If you don't prompt it correctly, if you're not careful crafting the prompts and then refining your prompts over time as you do this, the results are going to reflect that. And I think that's very
100%.
important.
And let me give you a real example of that. I did a lecture on Wednesday, 2 days ago, to a few hundred SMEs. And I was making the point that sounds really simple, is you've got to talk in the language of your customer. Don't talk in, like marketing wise, don't talk about brand awareness and brand equity. No one cares. Talk about customers and sales, right? And I said, go on to Gemini, Claude, Chat, whatever one you want to use, and just prompt it and say, I'm a wedding planner in Chicago. I do everything from beginning to end. A little bit about my business and a little bit about the consumers I'm trying to attract, and tell it to search all the forums, Reddit, all the chats, everything online, and say, what are the biggest issues people are finding with wedding planners in Chicago? And tell me their exact issues in their language. That took me 1.5 minutes of my time to think. So it's not an easy 1.5 minutes because it's focused, but 1.5 minutes. And I then get back this catalogue of sourced language that my consumers are talking. So I now know that if I'm a wedding planner in Chicago, my website should be answering the questions that these people are talking about because these are their concerns.
Yes. Yes.
So
So
don't
good.
worry about SEO and anything like that. Just talk in the customer's language. And if you do that, people will naturally find you, and you can use AI to do that for you. But you've got to have the imagination beforehand to think, this is what I need to do, and then check it afterward. Does it make sense? People would say that. And if you do the 10 and the 10, you're in a great position. There's no excuse now to have a website that doesn't meet the needs of the customer, because you can find out what the customer exactly wants from you.
So well said. I love that. Richard, your business and your team and your clients need you to lead at a higher level today than they did 5 years ago. And that same thing is going to be true 5 years from now. How do you stay on top of your game? How do you level up with the new leadership skills that your team and your business and your clients are going to need you to have in the years to come?
A couple of answers to that, if I may. One is continuous learning, I think, should be part of all of us. So I've just completed a couple of courses at London Business School, London School of Economics, one on leadership and one on marketing. So those two areas that I sort of thrive in, I'm hoping I know the latest stuff. One of the things that I try and think about leadership is you normally have 3 levels. You've got upward, sideways, and below. And most people come in and think, well, all I have to do is make my boss happy. But the reality is, I heard this the other day from someone, most of the people who advocate for you are not going to be your boss. They're going to be people below you and to the side of you. And if you want to progress in your career, your boss is not enough, usually, because other people might challenge it or other people may support it. So it's not, when I say upwards, I'm not just talking about the boss. I'm talking about the levels, plural, that sit above you, the levels that sit across you, and the levels that sit below you. In a way, managing people below should be the easiest, because in theory, in a hierarchical situation, they sort of should listen to you. But I feel there's a few things that you can do for all those levels. One is build commonality. What is it that you have in common on a personal level? What are they into? Do they have kids? Do they have a family? Do they go to church? Do they play golf? Do they go running on a Saturday morning? What is it? Get to know people as people. Because in the end, we're in a human game here where people ultimately buy people. And so the idea that you can get commonality is that you're both Dallas Cowboy fans, whatever it may be, right? That just find something with everyone around you that there's a little bit of commonality. If someone mentions their wife's name, remember the wife's name. If they say my daughter's ill, come back a week later and say, hey, how's Rebecca doing? Right? Because it shows a personal, genuine interest. And I think in leadership now, it's moved away from I tell you what to do to we work on things together. The other thing I find in leadership, and I used to have a boss, Sarah, who was very, very good at this, was that I try that if I'm the most senior person in the room, I give my opinion last. Because what I don't want to do is give my opinion first and everyone to say, well, yeah, because he said it. Right. They'll never say it's because you said it, but they'll go, oh, yeah. Right. And then the other thing is trying to get people behind you. And I think it's something like politically, where people are not understanding the vision. Where are we all going and what are we trying to achieve? And if you can break that vision down into really simple language that everyone understands and everyone understands their part in it. You know, if the person who, let me give an example. If you go to a hotel, the person on the door who opens the door for you, tells you where to eat that night, welcomes you, is friendly, tells you where to park the car, and gives you a tip about how to get theatre tickets, that person has a massive impact on the experience that you're going to have at that hotel. Yes. And so the person opening the door is equally as important as the person who answered the phone when you rang up, as the internet experience when you booked, as the person on reception. You think about how many people influence your journey. And so when you're leading, it's really, really important to bring everyone together and not be siloed and think everyone has a role here. If you rang up a company and the person at the other end of the phone sounded bored, miserable, disinterested, all that money they spend promoting their brand is worthless because he or she on the phone have just ruined it. And so I think from a leadership point of view, we have to see that bigger picture. We have to see the vision, and we have to make people feel that their role in it is important. Because the minute they feel they're just a cog in a wheel, everything tends to go. So there's a few tips, but it's a race without a finish line, because you're absolutely right saying 5 years' time, I'd probably give a very different answer. But I think if you can be a human and you can listen, I should add this, listening, the most important skill, listen to what's being said and listen to what's not being said.
That's right.
And we've all had conversations with people where all I feel is you're waiting for your turn to speak. Thinking, how much longer is this going to go on? Because I've got my view to say. And we've all had conversations with people who truly listen and reflect and sometimes say, hey, William, can I just read that back to you? Because I'm not sure I understood, but I just want to make sure I did. You go, oh, really listen to me. So lots and lots of different ways you can do it, but have a vision, understand people as a human, and learn how to listen, I think would be 3 of them.
I love that, Richard. I think that's so intentional and so purposeful. And I think seeing people as actual 3D human beings, not as the cogs, I think that's critical to leading well. And I love that you are so focused on growing in this and developing this and maintaining that teachable spirit, that continual learning posture. So as you were in that posture, is there a book that has made a big difference in your journey that you would recommend to the leaders who are listening?
Oh, that's a really, really interesting question. Certainly on the marketing front, well, there is a book actually. It's called, it's by Lafferty, who used to head up Procter & Gamble, Playing to Win.
Yes.
He talks about the strategy behind winning companies. So that's really interesting. There's also, can I go with 2 others? I'm sort of not really answering your question.
Please.
But the 2 others was, there's a book called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, which talks about how to lead strategically and what strategy really looks like and how you bring companies with you and how you bring the people with you. And I think that's really, really interesting. So that's one. And the third one is an older book, but you're probably familiar with it, From Good to Great, which looked at how good companies can get. It's a brilliant book, right?
One of my favorites.
Yeah. And again, it talks about the importance of leadership and charisma and vision and treating people as individuals. All 3 of those books are interesting because none of them say, I am a leadership book, but all 3 of them, you'd see woven into it is that if you can't lead people or you can't lead an organization, you're not going to win. I was also interested just in your comment there about treating people as people, because I think as people tend to get higher and higher up in companies, the temptation is to look at spreadsheets with people's names on it and costs.
Right.
Suddenly that human element disappears because you're thinking, oh my goodness, I've got to cut costs.
That's right.
And I think it's very important that we as leaders don't fall into that trick and also understand that there's human capital here, which is not just a number on a spreadsheet. It's wider than that.
That's well said. Very well said. Richard, we could keep talking and we could go an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I think there's so much here that I have picked up in this conversation. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing so generously here. I know our listeners are going to want to stay connected to you and continue to learn more from you and more about what you're doing. What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, firstly, thank you for your words. It's been a real privilege to be on with you today. So thank you for the opportunity. Truly appreciate it. 2 ways, really. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Richard Levy, Levy1. So just the sort of number 1. Apparently there's another Richard Levy who got there before I did. So I've had to take Richard Levy 1. And I write quite a lot on LinkedIn, and it's mainly my thoughts on the world or things I see happening or marketing stuff or business stuff or leadership. And I try and post quite a lot of quotes or videos that have particularly resonated. So please do follow. And the other thing is obviously email me, Richard Levy at Sophera, Sophera marketing.co.uk. And, I'll always engage back. And also, if you don't agree and you want to challenge back, please do so. Life should be about, there's more than one version of the truth. So anyone who disagrees or sees things from a different angle, I embrace that, and let's have a conversation about it.
Love it. We'll have all those links in the show notes.
Brilliant.
Richard, thank you for your generosity and your time today.
Not at all. I loved it. So thank you. Likewise.